emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 1182.JB2419, certificate number 17398, Snow Valley, Oklahoma.
Being a farm boy, you don't cut the fence. You cut the cloth that gets the people out of the fence if you have to.
You ruined some ski jackets.
That's right, yeah. Their jacket's replaceable. That fence is important to keep the cattle in.
Now, as a musician, John Roderick.
No.
Woke up this morning. I was a musician. You've heard the word payola, I assume.
Sure. Payola is a big part of the music industry then and now.
Is it still? That's what I was going to ask.
Oh, well, I mean, it depends on how you calculate what payment is.
Well, just to explain to viewers, there was a scandal early in the rock era of record labels and unscrupulous manager types paying off radio stations and DJs to play certain music.
That's right.
Which was important because airplay would not only, it determined chart rankings, it goosed sales. And back then, individual DJs could dictate playlists. And why wouldn't they play the platter that came with a
little bit of a handy,
a few $100? I don't know. It became a scandal, right?
Right.
Such that the FCC cracked down and maybe even new regulations and legislation was passed to say that no, that you cannot. It's a form of bribery, essentially.
Right, but you can't keep payola out of the entertainment business.
How could you? Just thinking how that law would be written, it just seems impossible.
Like the records that get what are called end caps in record stores, which is to say that they get a little display at the end of the row.
Right.
That is a thing that record labels
happens in supermarkets
pay
too.
for. Supermarkets.
And you expect that Nabisco paid to put the Triscuits right there.
Right.
And you don't think the store is just recommending Triscuits because of their whole weedy goodness.
Well, independent record stores, I think that people kind of do suspect that a lot of that stuff is...
there's something different when it's an art and not a cracker.
Yeah, the employee pick
There's been
whatever.
Curation.
But in today's world where people don't really buy records in record stores, but they get them online, there are all kinds of ways to play with the algorithms that put things on the charts. And we see it in book publishing too, where a company will, Donald Trump's father will buy 100,000 copies of Donald Trump Jr.'s book. Or a think tank, right?
Yeah, I think the New York Times even has a symbol now to tell you which items in the bestseller list have been goosed by bulk buys.
Is that right?
There's like a little dagger symbol that appears next to Liberal Tears, the snowflakes I melted with my lasers by... Charlie Kirk or something,
right.
And then it'll be dagger, like
100,000 copies.
Charlie Kirk's dad bought
were bought by the Koch Foundation,
right?
And I think one way that works now is that a band will put their album on Amazon for 99 cents for the first day or first couple of days, which gooses sales, right? They sell 100,000 copies of their record at 99 cents. but the music business only records that as 100,000 copies. So suddenly the record is in the top 10, and they didn't. It was a lost leader. They lost money on it, but they got into the charts.
And with all the visibility,
and
that
the presumption
implies.
is then that will drive sales, further sales.
Wasn't there some gimmick? I don't know if this is still allowed, but in the past decade of artists, or I guess labels, giving out a copy of the work with a concert ticket or something, then that counts as a sale.
So Prince,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Prince,
like pioneered that idea. When I went to see him here at the Key Arena back in the 2000s. Every person that walked in the door got a copy of his new record, and he counted all of those for his SoundScan, right? His record sales. And Prince, of course, is selling 15,000, 20,000 tickets in every market in the country on a national tour. And so he was posting these incredible sales. And I think eventually
did SoundScan have to change their rules?
Said, no, you can't do that. And he baked the album price into the ticket price.
So they were legitimate,
sure,
full price sales.
I mean, if you were going to pay $70 for a ticket anyway, and now it costs $80, it was pretty genius and pretty obviously like Prince level innovation. But SoundScan felt like everybody's going to do that, and then it negates our completely imaginary set of rules.
Bookstores now do that as well. They got tired of people coming to the author event and then just on the way out the door buying the book on Amazon.
Right.
So now your ticket to the event is
comes with the book,
$17.99 cover price of the book or whatever.
Right.
Have you ever in any way, large or small, practiced payola? Are you now, or have you ever been did you ever buy bacon and eggs for a DJ to play a record back in the day? Or?
No, but there's so much in-kind work that you do when you're a band.
So sexual favors?
Yeah, a lot of that. And you drive out of your way to appear on somebody's internet radio show.
Right.
You spend your precious hour of your time making content for some influential DJ somewhere. And it's not money, but it's not money unless you think that your time is worth anything.
Unless you're under the illusion that your time is worth something.
But all of that it's under the heading of promotion, and that's what that payola looks like to most people too. Is like, no, we're promoting the record, and we're promoting it by
throwing a party and bringing.
Yeah, that's right, and giving you. I mean, I appeared in. I did a tour one time of New York City advertising agencies, where my label.
That's who buys your records.
Yeah, my label and my publicist walked me around Manhattan, and I went and played 3 songs in 5 different big advertising agencies, where I would say like, well, this next song, which was about a terrible relationship I had that resulted in an ectopic pregnancy and death to all comers, would be a great theme song for your new M&M campaign. Here it is.
Oh, I see. That's what's happening. You're auditioning for...
Yeah.
Because those guys are now the tastemakers, the ones who could put you in a Volvo commercial.
That's right. And my label and publicist paid for a lobster roll lunch to keep all these ad executives there in the employee lunchroom while I was playing.
You can't just ply them with liquor like on Mad Men?
Well, and the thing is,
lobster rolls now?
They're all super rich, and those lobster rolls came right out of my royalties. But I do have to say that, it wasn't a couple of ad agencies used Long Winter songs, and it ended up paying off. All those lobster rolls.
And you think it was, I'm sure the songs are great, but I assume you were also very charming at the party.
Charming at the party, and there are an awful lot of songs that these people can choose from. So if you put yourself in front of them, I cannot point to any one of those ads that came as a direct result of having done that stuff. But the general idea that you need to...
You got to network. People will talk.
Not just network, but like provide lobster rolls to Manhattanites in order to get them to listen to your songs, in order to get them to consider using your song on a Fiat ad.
I don't know if you're the real victim here, John. Consider the lobster.
No, well,
the lobster gave his all.
I'm not the victim. We're sitting in a bunker that was paid for by a Fiat ad.
By one ad. Was it actually Fiat? I can't remember.
There were a lot of ads. Fiat was one. The best one was a Miller beer ad that they paid me the money and then never ran the ad.
Oh, that's even better.
They were like, we're changing direction, but we signed the contract.
I was once paid an insane amount of money to be in a Domino's pizza ad in which I pressed a buzzer on the wall of a room and a pizza was delivered. It was like one of those smart home things.
Did you avoid the Noid by doing that?
I was 100% successful in avoiding the Noid. But also the ad never, I may have told this in the Noid entry, the ad never aired because they couldn't get the buzzer to work. So they ran some version of the campaign that did not have me and my button. And yet the check was the same.
How hard is it to get the buzzer? You put a buzzer sound in after the fact in post, right?
No, they wanted it to be a commercial product that they could kind of prototype.
It was a real thing.
Yeah, they wanted people to have a little smart home button that when they pressed it would place their familiar Domino's order.
Who
is ordering that much cardboard pizza?
Who would want that? What's that? Oh, that's our Domino's.
I think there's a kind of smart. I don't know if this is still contemporary, but a few years ago, there was an idea that the smart homes of the future would have, like in your laundry room, you just have a thing that you tap, and that tells Amazon to send you more detergent.
You'd have a control board like the bridge of an old spaceship that had 10,000 little flashing lights, and this was like laundry detergent, pizza.
It would just be distributed. Instead of getting on your device and saying, okay, I need detergent, I need pizza, I need flour.
Right.
Like by your flour bin, you'd tap the thing that makes flour appear. And in the laundry room, you'd tap the thing that makes detergent
What
appear.
A great idea. And
they're banking on the laziness of the American consumer that doesn't want to walk downstairs.
They were all like buttons as big as the game Sorry.
In the Domino's ad, it was a comically large button. Right. But I think they just missed the fact that because you have a smartphone,
right,
you essentially have that button
right.
at all times.
Or your Ring camera that somebody's hacked into and is right. whispering to you in the night, you need more paper towel.
Or just, they've hacked into your deodorant button and now thousands of pounds of deodorant show up, or deodorant detergent. But payola in the music industry is a live concern. As recently as the early 2000s, there was a settlement where Sony had to pay $10 million because they were making backdoor deals with large commercial radio chains, including, I assume, our old corporate, Omnibus's previous corporate umbrella.
Right, iHeartMedia, formerly known as Clear Channel.
The very successful rebranding.
I have to believe that a lot of this is money going from money in one pile being used to create money in another pile, and the two piles are...
Does that not affect the artist?
No, well, within the Sony accounting universe, which is my favorite of all the superhero universes, the Sony accounting universe...
Love the SAU.
Like, they can spend $1 million to earn $10,000 because of
some
just
tax write-off,
just the way they have it conceived.
That's great. That's what's great about business. The Omnibus being a purely academic project, we have only admitted entries on their own merits. We have never allowed Payola to color the coverage we give to a certain cultural trend. We talked about the Noid for an hour, but Domino's didn't send us a single pizza.
Well, and I should say, at risk of biting the hand that failed to feed us. But during the iHeartMedia transition, during the transition from How Stuff Works, the company we originally signed to do the show with, /4.
With whom we signed.
When they were purchased by iHeartMedia, we started to get pitched quite a bit to do branded shows.
We haven't talked about that.
We haven't.
What if somebody said...
That was one of the things that
propelled us. What if somebody said,
you
you guys should do the history of dot matrix printers and Epson will send you a 6-figure check?
What if Seagram sponsored a whole series of shows that you did on, say, Zima and other fun alcohol pops?
The funny thing is we would totally do a Zima show, but the question becomes, do you feel grubby doing that same show because Seagram's told you to?
Well, or paid you to. Yeah, and I think as we started to see that the strategy was less to let us do a show and just try to sell ads on it, and more to have our show be an extended opportunity for ads.
That is where the money is, it turns out.
And that was where we started looking for the ripcord.
We got very skeptical at that point. And yet, despite all our high ideals, I am about, for the first time, to introduce the grubby specter of payola to this previously impeccable integrity of the omnibus.
Wait a minute, are you selling me out here? Well, what am I just along for the ride? Are you getting paid somehow?
A couple months ago, my 17-year-old son, who occasionally pitches omnibus ideas. Dylan, I think, is on the record as having wanted us to do that blowout college football game we did. The 222-0, whatever.
And having mentioned Dylan, we need also now to mention Caitlin,
the child I prefer.
That's right.
I think because Dylan's not going to come off well in this story. Maybe we've complimented Caitlin by implication.
And we should also stipulate that Caitlin prefers to be called Kate.
She's Kate. That's true. In fact, at school, she's Kay.
Kay.
And I didn't know this. It turns out there's another Kate. So she's Kay to avoid confusion. But I think she also thinks it's a little cooler because, of course, your school name is cooler than your parent name.
Right. Although all you have to do is watch The Godfather 2 to have a very different feeling about the name Kay.
I would be able to say, now who's being naive, Kay, like all the time, which would be fantastic for a 13-year-old girl.
Do you think I would let that happen, Kay?
And I could just I already do the thing where I gently close doors in her face all the time. So Dylan came to me a few months ago, and he pitches the show idea of Snow Valley, Oklahoma. And I say, oh, cool. What's the deal? I've never heard of Snow Valley, Oklahoma. And he says, oh, well, it's a failed ski resort. It's a funny story.
Uh-huh.
And
good job, Dylan. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for doing the research there, Dylan. Thanks for doing the legwork. And at some point I looked up Snow Valley, Oklahoma to see why, my son doesn't ski.
Right.
Why is he interested?
He's not an Oklahoman.
He is not Oklahoman. He's never been to Oklahoma. I don't know if I've been to Oklahoma.
Have you not been to Oklahoma?
There's like 11 states I haven't been to, and I'm pretty sure Oklahoma is one of them.
Now, this may seem counterintuitive, but let me recommend Oklahoma.
It's not counterintuitive at all. My people are from Oklahoma.
Oh.
Mindy has friends in Tulsa and has spent time there.
It's a fascinating state with a great variety of geography and maybe less of a variety of culture, but still an awful lot of culture.
Will Rogers?
Will Rogers from Oklahoma.
Birthplace of modern American topical comedy is from Oklahoma, of all places.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point I asked Dylan, well, I can't really actually find out much about this obscure bit of Oklahoman lore. Where are you getting this from? And he said, oh, I heard it from my friend Hayden.
Is Hayden the friend's real name?
Yes, I'm naming Hayden on this show.
Oh, Hayden. Okay.
And I think another couple months passed, and Dylan asked me again, hey, how come you didn't do Snow Valley, Oklahoma? I'm like, Dylan, why are you so interested in this Oklahoma ski story? He says, well, and this is where the payola comes out. He says, well, Hayden says that he'll give me some really rare Pokemon cards if your dad's podcast covers Snow Valley, Oklahoma.
Well, so Hayden listens to Omnibus.
Apparently.
And Hayden,
which seems unlikely on the face of it.
And Hayden had an idea.
Hayden apparently has I did some research last night.
Okay.
Dylan and I were texting back and forth with Hayden. Hayden, it turns out, has
you guys are all in the same house, but you're texting one another, right?
Hayden is not in our house.
Oh, okay.
Hayden is in Hayden's house.
I see.
Because that's so Hayden. But Hayden and I Hayden mentioned that his grandparents are from Oklahoma, and I believe the region of Oklahoma that our story concerns. And so he knew about, this kind of funny local story of Snow Valley and thought, and maybe he had realized that we cover some of that kind of Americana and cultural detritus in this venue and thought, your dad should do that. And when it didn't happen, he decided to sweeten the deal
with some rare Pokemon.
With a Delphox EX, a Groudon EX, an Eviltal EX. I asked Dylan specifically, I need to know which Pokemon cards. And he said, why? And I said, because I'm going to mention them on the show.
Right, and now Dylan's all of a sudden backtracking a little bit, right? Now
He
realizes...
He was absolutely backtracking. He was like, wait, well, I have to ask Hayden which cards? Yes, Dad, that's weird.
Yeah.
No, it is not.
No.
Detail is the engine that drives journalism and storytelling.
Did
Dylan.
he start to feel like you maybe were going to shame him on this show somehow?
I think he was starting to see this shape up, and he wasn't sure if this was worth a Delphox ES.
And Hayden, although he's right now basking in the
and a Groudon EX,
basking in the mention of his name, is going to rue that he ever walked into this.
Well, there are two kinds of teens. There are the teens that love to have the spotlight of adult attention gleaming on them.
Right.
And then there are others who realize the kind of how iffy and how compromised the spotlight of adult attention can be.
Well, let's drop it. Let's drop the needle on the record right there and say these are 17-year-olds who are playing with Pokemons. What is going on? Shouldn't they have graduated to cars or girls or something?
The funny thing about Dylan is that he had an amazing Pokemon card collection at some point.
Right.
And then he turned 9 and was like, I don't need these anymore, and gave them to a buddy or gave them to Goodwill or whatever you do with old Pokemon
these
cards.
Things were probably worth $1 million.
And then in today's money, yes.
What? Are you kidding?
No, I think there might have been some. I think back then they were still being made by. I don't know how this turned into a Pokemon episode. At some point, they were being made by Wizards of the Coast, the Magic the Gathering collectible card outfit.
We know some of those people.
Yeah, and we're friendly with them. And that's a local outfit because Magic was a local product. And I think because of that, these cards are now rare, just as, we said, stamps and coins are rare if they have different trim or,
right.
So the look of the cards changed, and now the old-timey ones have some cachet.
That year that the 57 Chevy was made by Ford,
exactly.
Those are extremely rare.
But then I think it may have happened again where Dylan got into Pokemon, the Pokemon fad at some point.
Is this because of Pokemon Go? Is that what happened?
The third time it happened, yes, it was Pokemon Go. And now he's got a girlfriend and they go play Pokemon Go with her parents. Pokemon Go to your girlfriend's house.
His girlfriend is a sweet gal.
She's fantastic.
She's a really nice lady, and she's
unclear why she's dating Dylan.
She has been welcomed into your family in a really nice way. I see her around there all the time,
and vice versa. Dylan often wants to bail on whatever our activity is because his girlfriend's parents are playing Pokemon Go at Seattle Center, and we find that's as close as we get to some wholesome family activity. So we allow it.
Extremely wholesome at one level, but also, I don't know, very concerning at another level.
If they were playing backgammon, of course, we'd be all for it. Yes, right. Yes, go play backgammon with your girlfriend's dad.
But if your girlfriend's dad is playing cops and robbers with you, that seems like, I don't know, a little weird.
So it's not even the tech that concerns you; it's the real life immersive aspect.
Yeah, like we're going to the Seattle Center to play cops and robbers with my friend's parents.
Want to come? Yeah. Well, I'll just drive down and meet you there because I'm 17 years old.
Boo, boo. And so Hayden presumably is also part of this strange group of people who almost could fight in a war, but are instead collecting virtual Pokemon.
Keep in mind, these kids are months away from being able to vote.
That's right.
These children will be able to vote, many of them, in the 2020 presidential election. Dylan will not. He'll be a week away from being 18.
Oh.
Which is good. One less vote for Trump.
Right. But I do feel like there's
one less Jill Stein vote.
There's a kind of trope right now among people, Generation X boomer.
The Gen X boomer axis.
Yeah. Where there's a lot of sort of virtue signaling praise for young people that's happening in the culture. Like, the young people are amazing.
They've got it covered.
They're so smart and amazing. Like, let's give the young people power. And I'm like, do not give young people power. What are you talking about? You remember being a young person? Like, of course they seem virtuous. They have no... They have only like 5 ideas.
I trust several young people. I trust neurotypical Scandinavian children that are concerned about global warming, for example.
Sure, that's very nice, but I would not give that child the keys to my house and say, will you look after my house for a week?
Would you give Greta Thunberg your Domino's pizza buzzer?
I would
absolutely not. Think how many pizzas she would order.
Would you give Greta Thunberg the password to your computer? No.
Maybe I would. She looks very serious. I think she would do my taxes.
Right.
She seems very capable. Maybe Malala would get my charitable giving in order. Who knows?
Maybe. And the thing is, my high school girlfriend, Kelly, would have been absolutely trustworthy, but she was my girlfriend, and she would have invited me over to your house. She would be there doing your taxes, and I would be like licking the frosting out of all of your frosted goods.
When you're a parent, you actually come to enjoy what is bashed in the media as the perpetual adolescence of the rising generation.
Right.
Because you don't want your kids out trying rave drugs and day trading.
Sure. Peyote and like
Peyote
penny
and-
stocks.
That old combination. You want them playing cops and robbers at the Seattle Center.
Sure.
Because it seems like
Keeps them out of trouble.
It keeps them out of trouble. Anyway, all this by way of saying that in 10,000 years, the microbe people are going to be listening to Oklahoma lore, and I think they deserve to know that Snow Valley may not have made it into the omnibus on its own merits, because it's something that's gone almost entirely down the media memory hole unless you're from north central Oklahoma. But it's a fascinating story.
Well, no, what's interesting to me is that if Dylan had the wisdom of an adult instead of that of a child, he would have contacted me about this story, because I would have been like, "Oh, Snow Valley, Oklahoma, thanks, Dylan." But instead, he went to his dad, who, I mean, if he had come to you with some story about how calculus is used as a aphrodisiac, you would have been like, "Yeah, sure." But it's a ski story in Oklahoma.
That's your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and you
love skiing, you love Oklahoma.
He picked the host that was gonna turn this into an episode about embarrassing his kids.
Well, you're seeing the combination of two impulses that a lot of teens have, and specifically in Dylan, which is his desire for things, for Pokemon cards, and his fear of you, or his fear of intimidating adults.
And I'm curious. Dylan obviously has not found collecting and playing Pokemon to inhibit his appeal as a potential mate, right? Like, this is not going to inhibit his ability to breed.
Right. Even if your nerd friends are into your nerd hobby, you realize the girls may not be into your nerd hobby, but that may be a relic of our generation.
Yeah, right. I mean, the kids that I knew that spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make a broadsword, the assumption was that they would never have children.
The thing about making tech an exclusively male province is, we often talk about how it disenfranchised generations of women. It's a problem we still see today in STEM fields, in the kind of old boys network that's built up around a lot of these professional angles. But think of the real victims, nerdy teenage boys who could have been dating all this time if their potential girlfriends had just been into Star Trek Deep Space Nine as much as they were.
That's right. And the thing is, what did help you in the dating world in the 1980s, at least in my experience?
Peyote.
Skiing.
And
skiing on peyote.
Is it like instead of snow, or skiing under the influence of peyote?
If you can get enough peyote together that you are skiing on it, you're a big wheel.
Is that a true story? Was there in Alaska in your youth, was there a lot of an aura of desirability and masculinity that surrounded skiing?
For whatever reason, the 1970s and 80s were an era where skiing was ascendant as a sport that communicated a kind of preppy upper middle classness, and primarily because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And also the gear is expensive, and it requires that you often travel long distances to do it and have a place to stay when you're there. I mean, everything about skiing makes it not accessible. And so it was a signifier of...
It's a sport that tries to keep people out.
That's right.
By its very nature.
But also
we'll do this on a mountain.
It's hard. And so you exhibit prowess in addition to wealth,
and the prowess in a sexy, glamorous way. Like James Bond could never play soccer against an adversary.
No,
but he could certainly try to out-ski their henchmen.
And this is a great thing about skiing, and it's why it appealed to me so much, is that it is a solitary sport. I mean, you're on a team, you're racing, but as soon as you start to move on skis, you're by yourself. And you could be surrounded by other skiers, but you are alone.
That's me all the time. I don't need ski gear for this.
You're alone in your bubble until you come to a stop. Until you're down in the lodge and drinking hot cocoa. So that appeals to a lot of people, myself included.
Well, speaking of driving long distances to have this experience, this bubble experience, I take you now to Kellyville, Oklahoma, located in, like I said, kind of north central, northeast Oklahoma. Founded in 1892 by a man named Kelly who, Oklahoma was still Indian territory in 1892, capital I, capital T. Like it said Indian territory on maps.
Sure.
Because it was the place that all these tribes have been relocated, because despite your insistence that Oklahoma is a great place to live, we hadn't found oil there.
That's
and therefore,
right.
we thought no harm in placing Indians from Florida to the Dakotas.
Right. Nobody wants to
right
live here pre-oil discovery, after which we should do an episode on the Osage Indian massacres of Oklahoma. And
Absolutely.
And I don't laugh. I laugh a rueful laugh.
Right.
Because it is a sordid tale.
I like that HBO is getting into forgotten Oklahoma racism as well.
Are they?
Well, they poured tens of $millions into that Watchmen TV show, which
is set in
more
Oklahoma?
than you would think about Oklahoma's troubled racial past.
Oh, I had no idea. I haven't watched. I thought I just assumed it was about the guy who had an ink blot for a face.
I don't think we can do the Tulsa, massacre / riots anymore, just because
it's common knowledge.
Every child in America now knows it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, maybe I should watch that show.
Kellyville. So Mr. Kelly got permission from the Bureau of Indian Affairs or whatever to found a trading post or a general store or something.
That's how they get you.
One of these guys getting rich off the tribes.
It's like Deadwood.
And grew up into a town at some point, had its own bank and post office in Cotton Gin, I guess. Must be cotton fields nearby. But the Depression hit Oklahoma kind of hard, as you may know. And so the population began to decline into the 20th century. For a long time, it was on the storied Route 66, which is what kept it afloat.
Oh, it's on 66.
It's still on 66 this day. Unfortunately, 66 is not on 66.
Right.
Everybody takes the interstate. And that didn't help as well. In fact, probably until this day, the most famous thing that ever happened in Kellyville is the worst train disaster in Oklahoma history.
I mean, that is an increasingly narrowing set of conditions.
You were ready.
I was like, the worst train disaster in Oklahoma history.
Even in the standards of American history, this is a pretty bad train disaster because it was a head-on collision.
What? How do you
even
mistake?
have a head-on? It's a train. It's a railroad. Do you know what I really enjoy, John?
What do you enjoy, Ken?
I enjoy these addenda entries we've been recording.
Yeah, we just got done.
Omnibus.
We just got done doing an addenda, and it really, they really stand on their own. It's
fun because we have managed to create this group of thousands of people who just do the work for us.
Mm-hmm. They all have things they want to add to our shows.
They all have fun, interesting expertise and stories, and you want to talk back to the podcast, and of course you can't, or you'll look like an idiot on the train. But now they can. They're suggesting their own material, and in the addenda episode, we can share those to an audience in this time period and beyond.
Sometimes we argue with them, but most of the time their additions are relevant and quite interesting.
And we're certainly respectful.
That's right. Well, yeah, mostly. But they lead us to sometimes go off on a different aspect of an episode we've done.
Yeah, they're kind of freewheeling in a way that, with Omnibus, we're usually trying to get back to the story because we're trying to, finish educating the future on whatever happened to this French foreign minister or whatever. Right. And here, we can just say whatever, and we can just start randomly Googling facts. You wanted to know how long a $5 bill lasted, so we looked it up.
5 years.
4.9 years or something.
But these are available only to people who subscribe to our Patreon, which involves some sort of contribution to the production of the show.
Yes, we have multiple tiers, and at any tier from $5 up, which would be all the tiers, you get immediate access at the end of every month to a new addenda episode, some of which are like getting up to an hour in length.
That's right.
How long was that last one? Was it close to an hour?
Yeah, it was 50 minutes, I think, worth of us going from episode to episode and kind of dealing with our viewer mail.
So a whole new, really a regular-sized bonus omnibus entry every month if you have the resources and choose to support the show.
And at different tiers of our Patreon, you have other benefits, right? Name some benefits at different tiers.
At the $10 tier, you get access to our, as well as the addenda episode, you get access to our image feed where we post show notes, funny things people have sent us, you and I clowning around.
Our show notes are hilarious.
They're illegible.
Right.
But let's not downplay how good they are, since we do want people to donate.
But there are tons of goofs. Right now I'm sitting here with the Jeopardy trophy greatest of all time. It's sitting for some reason over here on my side of the desk.
For some reason.
And on top of it, it has a little statue of a Basque or Catalonian boy taking a poop. Now, you're not going to know what that symbolizes, what that comes from, unless you're a subscriber. And this is a photograph that we'll post on our image
At
feed.
the $20 tier, you get a signed copy of one of our show notes. I have brought a Sharpie, and I'm going to make you sign those today.
Oh, we're going to send them to people in the mail.
Yes, we are sending them out worldwide.
Wow, how exciting.
For them.
Yeah.
And for you, if you like signing things.
I like signing things.
For $50, these high tiers are very aspirational.
Sure, they're specific to people that have a little bit more money to share.
Well, and they're specific to people who could just as easily hear the show for free, but enjoy the feeling of support and community, I guess.
Right.
At the $50 level, you get to choose a show topic that goes to the top of our heap. And we just got our first request today from Krista, who has 2 ideas that she'd like us to do.
I'm excited to hear them.
And at the $100 level, John and I will actually come to your house and do some chores.
Yeah, that's right. I will be a human Roomba.
We will
put me in a closet, and
we will actually do a video chat.
Yeah,
at the $100 level.
That's a lot of money, though.
It really, I don't see, on no level is that worth it. Again, it's just about the feeling of,
I don't know,
of support and community that people feel.
A video chat with somebody? It's probably going to be MC Hammer's kids or somebody that we're going to talk to.
Where would they get the money?
Oof, ouch, MC Hammer burn.
It's 1917. All of America's young people are off fighting World War I, and as a result...
Or on their way.
Or on their way, right.
Yeah.
There's a shortage of engineers and conductors and brakemen and so forth.
Right.
So you've got...
Then as now.
You've got... for different reasons. Less mustard gas-related reasons. You've got a bunch of less skilled people running all this stuff.
Right.
And more trains running because of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, there's a lot of troop trains running.
Oh, right.
Right.
Oh, and this is, if it's on Route 66, then it's also got to be, what is this, the Frisco line?
St. Louis and Santa Fe.
Yeah, right.
So you've got a passenger train from St. Louis and Santa Fe going one way. You've got a troop train out of Fort Sill going the other way.
Oh, I love this song.
It's a Gordon Lightfoot song, I think.
Good morning, America.
And apparently the troop train had decoupled without notifying whoever you notify when you split into 2 trains.
Right.
I guess, I don't know how this works. There's a second locomotive, apparently.
A brakeman would be talking to the people in the yard, right? The
there's
switchman?
a series of lanterns in some kind of semaphore-like arrangement. I don't know. Right. I don't know anything
Switches
about this. But so apparently it was not clear to the passenger train coming the other way. They thought they were clear of the troop train and did not realize there was a second troop train. The second half of the train is, just a mile behind.
Oh, dear.
So they get back, and that's how you get a head-on collision. Now, back then, trains are made of wood, which is not what you want in a head-on train collision.
Trains aren't made of wood. They were, yeah. Oh, I see. Train cars, right. I was trying to picture a steam locomotive
This is your steampunk Oklahoma fantasy.
Not sure.
No, the train cars in which most of the casualties were found are made of wood. So, in a car, you want a crunch zone. But in a train, you do not want that crunch zone to be the passenger cars.
You want a crunch zone in your Domino's pizza too.
That's absolutely what you want.
You get the crunchy crust.
In this case, the crew, of course, of both trains see what's coming and they jump to injury but safety. Apparently, the captain goes down with the ship etiquette.
No. If you see it, you hit the horn a couple of times and you bail.
And the whistle did not bail anyone. And in fact, there is a sad crunch zone story. The newspaper accounts of the crash refer to this as a complete telescoping of the first few cars of each train.
Oh, dear.
And
but they mean accordioning.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not telescoping in a good way.
No. Putting away your telescope.
What it means is the mail car slammed right into the well, I guess it probably went up and then it landed on the next two cars, which were first the smoker car where, people, there's some kind of parlor.
Sure, those people deserved to die.
And second, being Oklahoma 1917, the Jim Crow car.
Oh, dear.
So segregation apparently was the opposite of a city bus. For whatever reason, the front of the train was less prestigious.
Oh, because it was behind it was
closer
closer
to the engine,
smokestack.
I guess. You get cinders, yeah. So of the 32 that died in this accident, I believe only 7 were white people. It was the African American and Native American passengers in the Jim Crow car, just covering all my bases, who were like the vast majority of the casualties. But since then, that was kind of the high watermark for Kellyville as far as the national
really made
media.
it into the newspapers.
Yeah, that was pretty much the last time. The Dust Bowl, and then the end of, I guess, cotton, and then the end of rural America and the end of Route 66 shrunk the town. There was some, I think, oil and gas activity there, but it's still, population is much lower than it was at the beginning of the century. The nearby big city is Sapulpa, Oklahoma, which I have never heard of. I think Sapulpa is maybe a character from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. But he's also the namesake of this, a plausibly sized city. I don't know, 10 to 20,000 people maybe.
Right.
But again, Sapulpa really only on the national media map for one thing, which is in 2008, the Sapulpa Daily Herald did not print the results of the presidential election. Because Barack Obama is a black man.
So they just left it out?
They left it out.
The residents of Sapulpa could go on believing that there wasn't a black president?
George W. Bush was still president? The headline just read, John McCain wins Creek County.
No, really?
Yes. And when asked later, of course, nobody at the Sapulpa Daily Herald said, well, it's because the president's a colored fella now.
Right.
That's what they're thinking.
Right.
But that's not what they said. They said that, well, we're a local paper, so we just covered the local impact of the story. Now, of course, every previous election, the Sapulpa Daily Herald had announced the winner.
How fantastic in a way that such a mindset exists.
That really kind of does epitomize the modern American bubble. Obviously Fox News is not going to have the same story that's on CNN and NBC all the time.
Right.
But in this case, literally, the presidential election did not have an outcome in Creek County, Oklahoma.
Right. It's part of this like contemporary sort of, and I want to call it I want to describe it in partisan terms, but the sort of mentality that people have where they say almost like, can you prove that crimes are illegal?
This kind of bubble does work both ways. I mean, there's the famous Pauline Kael story about, I can't believe, when Nixon wins the landslide over McGovern, she says she can't believe he won because she didn't know a single person who voted for him.
Right.
On the Upper West Side. Now, I'm sure there's many nice things about Creek County, Oklahoma, but it's not, as you would expect, a great skiing destination.
I'm thinking of Oklahoma on a map of America.
It's in the middle.
It's in the lower middle.
Yeah, and the South, if there's a part of America that has no ski resorts, it would be south of the. You mentioned that it's hard to get to skiing.
It's hard to get to skiing,
and it's by necessity a regional. It's part of the culture and part of the terrain.
Well, what's funny is that Oklahoma is geographically in an interesting place in the country because there is a little teeny part of the panhandle of Oklahoma that touches Colorado.
Sure.
One of the great Rocky Mountain ski states. In fact, some might say in the top 4 great Rocky Mountain ski states.
Definitely the one that has the most John Denver songs about it.
And yet the part of Oklahoma that touches Colorado, it touches the part of Colorado where there is no skiing.
If you've ever flown into Denver, you realize you're still quite far from the mountains, and you're halfway into Colorado at that point.
And the largest part of the Oklahoma border is with the state of Kansas, famously without skiing.
And it's their motto.
It is
ad astra per aspera. That's Latin for without skiing.
Right. So, no, I'm surprised to find that there is any. I mean, Oklahoma, like a lot of states, has quite a bit of rolling
its ups and
prairie, right? But I don't think of it as a place with much elevation.
I have done research here. The closest ski resort to northeastern Oklahoma is in. You will be surprised at the state it's in. The great state of Iowa.
Really?
Really. Just across the river from Omaha, Nebraska, on the kind of the bluffs, I guess the Iowa Bluffs,
Sure.
Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Sure.
Is a not very good ski destination called Mount Crescent, Iowa. And you could get there from Kellyville, Oklahoma in a mere 7 hours if you wanted to drive to this kind of little bunny hill on the banks of the Mississippi River, I guess.
Well, that wouldn't be the Mississippi. That would be the, is it the Missouri there? What separates Iowa from
Nebraska?
What goes through Kansas City there? The Platte River? Oh, no, it's the Missouri.
The Mississippi-Missouri system. I had the right river system.
Yeah. The
Mississippi has already branched off there.
If you think of the bluffs there over the river, they're pretty substantial, but I don't
compared to any place else near Omaha, yes.
And Iowa has a lot of rolling hills, surprising topography there, but again, nothing I would look at and think, let's shush down those slopes.
Well, there's not a lot of powder. Mount Crescent, like a lot of these kind of borderline ski resorts, and I don't mean borderline in terms of quality, I just mean in terms of latitude.
I thought you meant in terms of personality disorder.
Yeah, it doesn't care about your emotions. It does not produce, it uses 100% artificial snow most winters. Mount Crescent was founded in 1961, and it has, a single toe and then 2 or 3
right,
very unexciting slopes.
Right. Well, it's one of those tow ropes that's run by somebody's old Peterbilt motor. Right. They start it with a hand crank.
And it's got, I read some reviews, and people are very enthusiastic, but mostly because they took their kids there to go tubing or sledding, or in the summer they went to the zip line.
That's fun.
If you actually went there to ski or snowboard, you're likely to write a Yelp review more like this one. My expectations from the outset were low for this place, and yet they still weren't low enough. But there's big parts of the world that are hours and hours away from skiing. The continent of Africa, for example.
Right. Although you could ski on Kilimanjaro pretty easily.
You could ski all the way down, probably.
Yeah.
You'd run over the Americans, dentists going up on foot or in jeeps or whatever. There are a few ski resorts in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco and whatever's next to Morocco.
I have crossed the Atlas Mountains.
Algeria.
You have Algeria there. You have you have Western Sahara.
And I don't think that far down there's any resorts. Western Sahara doesn't have a government, let alone a skiing infrastructure. But then
the Atlas Mountains are real mountains.
Yeah, no, they're
exciting.
That's real snow skiing. And then in South Africa, there's people who want to ski, and there's some. I mean, Lesotho is highland.
Oh,
it's. I think it has the highest low point of any nation on Earth because it's so small, and all of it is this upland plateau. Like nothing there is below 7,000 feet or something.
I imagine
so you can ski in South Africa and Lesotho.
Like preppies everywhere are looking for another way to distinguish themselves. I mean, you can play tennis and row crew all day. But at a certain point, you're going to want something that takes that to a higher level.
Yeah.
And so you're looking for skiing. I mean, if you're a South African like Biff, what are you going to do?
But nothing between Morocco and South Africa. Literally
in the entire
in
continent.
The entire continent.
Wow.
I don't know what that is. How far apart are those? 5,000 miles? 6,000 miles between? Maybe 5,000 miles between Morocco and South Africa.
No skiing,
unless you count the indoor hills of Egypt and then up into Dubai, up into or Arabia.
Right. The big mall in Dubai has some kind of crazy indoor ski resort. Although we should be clear, futurelings may be living in a world where the continent of Africa has collided with Asia Minor through some tectonic process, and they think of Dubai as being a city in Africa. But in our time, those were separate continents.
And in our time, the the biomes of the United States were such that we got snow in about half the country, and that may not be true in your era anymore.
That's right. They're thinking of skiing as a thing reserved for a few people in the North Slope of Alaska.
And that's true about skiing, right? If you're from New England, say, you think of skiing as a birthright. As you say, it's expensive and inconvenient, but it's something you could take a weekend trip to do, and all your friends are going to be doing. That's true of Alaska or Colorado or Northern California. Or
if you live anywhere outside of New England, you think of New England skiing as a form of punishment. But yeah, right. If you grew up
it's the snow, right? Is that the issue?
Yeah, the wind. I mean, it's not even snow they have there. Let's be honest. Anyone listening to this program, even distant in the future, is thinking of Vermont and New Hampshire skiing and going,
explain to me, a non-skier or possible future octopuses who cannot afford 8 skis, why you want to ski on powder as opposed to New England goop.
Well, as someone who is a skier and grew up skiing in the Northwest, I am accustomed to what's called Pacific Northwest cement.
Yeah, we have that.
Which is heavy, heavy snow that is not light and fluffy, but pretty hard work to move around.
It's just, does it feel like walking in mud kind of? It's hard on your ankles and your knees? And
I mean, to ski in it is fun, but it's better if it's been groomed, which is to say like sort of flattened with machines to make a kind of packed surface that you can make big carving turns in. The powder, such as it is fine. It's fun to ski.
Is it just because it goes whoo?
Well, powder in Utah and Wyoming and Montana and Colorado, the snow has a very different quality because the mountains are already so high, right? I mean, the mountain I grew up skiing, Mount Alyeska in Alaska, the base is at sea level. So the snow is very wet. But up in those high mountains that are some of them are 14,000 feet high.
And much further from any ocean that would bring in moisture.
Right. I mean, the base of the mountain is already 8,000 feet. So the snow that falls is really light and fluffy. The crystals are just really big. And so it combines to make this powder. And it really does act like powder and feel like powder. So as you're skiing through it, the snow is just poofing around you, almost in clouds of, like super fluffy light.
Is a
ice.
lot of it the visual aesthetic?
No,
it's just
no,
magical?
No.
Or?
No, the snow is, to ski through it is to float.
I see.
Whereas in the West, to ski through it is to work. Now, on the East Coast, the snow falls as ice, lands on the hill. It's already ice, and then it freezes even into a harder form of ice. So that skiing on the East Coast is really about chattering down the slope on, like basically just careening down on a just a sheet of like dirty ice.
Get out of my way. And, I don't know how to stop this thing.
And it makes East Coast skiers good. I mean, they know how to, the ones that are good have to be pretty darn good.
Because they're still alive?
Because they have to navigate a much more challenging conditions.
I mean, if you're born in Oklahoma, you have no such birthright. You have no expectation of skiing. Even Mount Crescent, Iowa is 7 hours away. The nearest Colorado resorts are 11 or 12 hours drive away. You just can't do it for a weekend.
No, I mean, you can initiate a cattle drive, which is something we couldn't do in
Alaska. That's what you do instead. You just start a cattle drive for fun. But in 1970, that was all about to change. A man named Willis Barrow and his wife were visiting her parents in, I'm going to say it wrong, Konawa, Oklahoma.
Uh-huh.
It can't be Kanawha. That sounds like a World War II battle. Konawa, maybe? I don't know.
Konawa sounds like a Thai restaurant, or I'm sorry, a teriyaki restaurant here in Seattle.
I assume it is a Native American word. I have no idea what it would mean.
Let's assume it is.
He's visiting his in-laws there. He is a ski guy who, I think he's from Stowe, Vermont, so he grew up skiing, again, on awful ice. Mm-hmm. But he later moved to Big Bear and became a ski instructor and ski area manager in California. And for 7 years, confusingly, the record says that he traveled the U.S. and Canada as a member of the Austrian ski team.
Right.
I don't know why a guy named Willis Barrow would be on the Austrian ski team. Or is that just a thing like Ice Capades? You're called the Austrian ski team and you tour America.
No, in fact, Austria produces the greatest skiers.
Exactly. So why do they need this guy named Willis from Vermont? Anyway, he must have been good if he's skiing for the Austrians.
Sure.
And while apparently he had a lot of experience with artificial snow. I don't know if...
In 1970?
Yes.
That was a burgeoning technology then.
Is it very early for that?
Well, they've been making artificial snow for a while, but 1970...
My grandparents' freezer was making artificial snow in the 50s, I think.
It was only, that technology only became really universal in the 70s and 80s. We made artificial snow at Mount Alyeska. Now it's a massive industry. Resorts are laying down a bed of artificial snow as soon as it gets cold, before it's even snowed naturally.
And because then they've got that, and if it snows, all the better.
Yeah, what you're trying to do with the ski resort is establish a base of snow, and then throughout the year you can, as the snow falls, right, you're maintaining your base, and that's kind of the key.
Just lesson of politics. You got to maintain your base.
Maintain it.
I assume a lot of it is not just the chemical composition. It's more because it's just it's just water for the most part. I assume it's just the mechanical process of how you spray it, how you get the right texture, how you spray it on the hill. There must be a lot of logistics and infrastructure involved in this.
That's right.
And I assume he had some experience with that at Big Bear. Would Northern California have needed artificial snow at the time?
Sure, could have.
So he's got years of experience with artificial snow, and he's obviously one of these guys who thinks this is the future. And while he's visiting his wife's parents,
big difference.
It is. And they shouldn't be the same people, even in Oklahoma. During this visit, he got to talking with his wife's parents and started doing some math. And he realized that although the weather in Oklahoma is moderate, that with artificial snow, you don't need too many freezing temperatures. He decided that if he just had 10 nights where the temperatures drop below zero, he could operate a ski resort for 30 days on artificial snow.
Really?
Once temperatures fall below freezing, it would only take him 8 hours with the system he had in place, I guess, from Big Bear Lake. It would only take him 8 hours to cover 5 acres with 5 inches of snow.
And then if the temperature went up to 37 degrees, he could maintain.
I guess.
Wouldn't be enough to melt.
Yeah, I guess that 5 inches gives him enough of a base that he can maintain.
Huh.
And so all he needed was a suitably hilly spot, and he felt like he had the snowmaking apparatus to run a ski resort in Oklahoma. And of course, northeastern Oklahoma is kind of hilly. Mm-hmm. So he starts driving around.
Hilly and chilly, they call it.
It's got to be hilly, and it's got to be chilly. So he spends just months driving around northern Oklahoma, checking out climate and terrain.
He's only visiting his in-laws here. Is he deciding like this is...
He thinks maybe this is his big business.
Okay.
Like he's he's been skiing since 1938. He's a veteran, but you can't do that forever. He's moved into ski management and ski instruction, but this would be his business.
Right.
And there'd be no competitors. He'd be getting in on the ground floor of Oklahoma skiing.
Right. No competitors for 7 hours in every direction.
It's a pretty brilliant move. And
although this is not a populated area.
No.
Right? There's
not populated with people with a known propensity towards ski weekends.
Right.
So there's a couple difficulties. Getting enough people and then convincing Oklahoma that they want to ski.
Right.
Maybe the idea is because there's nobody for 7 hours around, you have a big radius.
Right.
Maybe he'll be drawing in Texans and Louisianans and Arkansans and, people from all over.
Well, the other thing is that skiers tend to think that the appeal of skiing is self-evident. Right? Like you don't need to convince people to ski.
Build it and they will come.
It's right there. Skiing.
I think he may have overestimated that just because of his personal blinders of growing up in ski culture for decades. He thought if this was there, of course everyone would want this because he comes from ski land.
Right.
So he's got to find a spot. He spends, months searching for a spot. In 1 week alone, he drives 3,000 miles checking out different potential hills. In Oklahoma. I mean, he's obviously not in a straight line or he would leave Oklahoma.
Sure.
He's driving around different towns and back roads.
I mean, that's a long way to drive. That's every road in Oklahoma, 3,000 miles.
It's like a fractal. You know, he's making little tiny turns and jogs. Yeah, that number makes it look like he has seen a lot of rural Oklahoma. And finally, in Kellyville, Oklahoma, he finds a likely looking hill. I mean, it's a cow pasture, and it would have to be cleared of all the trees and brush.
Right.
But he can kind of see it. There's the area we can grade for parking. Those are the trees we cut down. We can put a tow rope here. And so he leases 7 acres from a local rancher.
Well, that
named
was smart. He didn't try to buy it.
He didn't buy it, right? So he doesn't totally have the blinders on. But he thinks he's got 3 slopes there.
And this is not far from Tulsa, we should say, right? It's close to a big town.
There are big cities you could draw people from. Now, today, I assume a lot of these Midwestern cities are maybe not full of, but have quite a few transplanted coastal folks there for work. Americans are more mobile today. They change jobs more often.
Now, we're going to get angry letters from some futurelings at characterizing Tulsa, Oklahoma as a Midwestern city.
You think the Midwest ends at the Kansas-Oklahoma border?
I do. I'm almost one of those people that would argue that the prairie states aren't part of the Midwest, but I'm going to get angry.
I see. You're like a Midwest is Ohio kind of guy?
Well, it certainly is Ohio. But
what's the center of the Midwest to you?
I'm going to say that the Midwest is Ohio, Indiana.
But what's the center? Chicago?
I would say Chicago's the center of the Midwest. Would you call Kentucky part of the Midwest?
Absolutely not.
But Wisconsin, you would say.
I'm okay with. I think we've done this before.
Yeah.
The fact that I think of Kansas as the quintessential Midwest, and maybe that's just Wizard of Oz's fault,
right,
makes me want to give Oklahoma, or at least the least Texan parts of Oklahoma, a bye.
But there are people in Iowa that are going to say that Iowa is a prairie state, not a Midwestern state.
Is it uncontroversial to say that Oklahoma is a prairie state, or is it too far
I think
south?
Oklahoma would be a prairie state.
Because it's true that
it's not a southern state.
Once we get into the Texas Panhandle or even Northeast Texas, I don't think of that as the Midwest.
But
so whatever the line is, to me, it's somewhere in Oklahoma.
No, New Mexico is a southwestern state.
Yes.
Western Texas is the southwest. But are you going to put Oklahoma as a southwestern state?
No.
Oklahoma,
at one time it was.
Oklahoma is a cowboy state, which to me says prairie. But maybe prairie isn't a region. I think it should be. I think prairie should be a region.
Anyway, today the prairie regions.
Okay, let's call it that.
And other parts of what the coastal folks would say, or flyover America. You know, the big cities of non-coastal America are full of transplants who like the lower house prices and have found a job there.
I think that.
But in 1970, less mobility.
Futurelings are going to call this the Platte Sea. Because it's going to be a giant ocean.
That'll be a nice break for them after the Dust Bowl. It'll be more trucks of Okies heading to California, but they'll be all wet.
Well, there'll be party barges.
So
you're suggesting that there are people in Oklahoma who have some kind of like vestigial memory of skiing.
Of skiing as a thing,
right?
But many fewer in 1970.
Well, and the thing is, mobility tends to work the other way. People from Oklahoma go to San Francisco to let their freak flag fly.
Well, that totally outnumbers them.
Right.
But I'm just saying there's probably more people moving. There's just less media coverage, but there's more people moving to these regional cities today than there were back then. People moved less then.
Right.
You know?
That's right.
You'd get a job with whatever in Chicago and stay there your whole life.
Right. You'd get a job at Diet Dr. Pepper Incorporated.
Is that the name of the company? They've spun off their diet division into its own.
They make Tootsie Rolls.
And so the Willis Barrow and his wife have big dreams. They're going to open for the winter of 1971. They're going to have tow ropes. They're going to offer instruction. There's going to be rentals because obviously Oklahomans don't own their own skis.
Well, but that's a lot of infrastructure to import and build.
It really is. He wants to have a slide. He wants to have kind of a small chalet, what he calls a huddle house. Right. Is that a skiing term? That's
no.
What the article says.
I mean, maybe.
He wants to have a, quote, huddle house where people can relax around a fire, après ski.
We do use the term house to describe ski lodges. Like we had one called the Round House, which was round.
Is there less huddling?
We didn't huddle, though.
You want to huddle?
But a lodge, day lodge, ski lodge is what we call them.
Day lodge soul? And he's got signage bragging about how there's going to be there's a slope with a 300-foot toe, a 500-foot toe, a 750-foot toe. These don't seem that long to me as a non-skier.
No, that's not. I mean,
there's little bunny hills.
You spend as much time on the rope as you do on the slope.
Oh, you made it. Is that not a skiing saying?
I've never heard that before, but I like it. That feels like it applies across a whole lot of different
an
areas
hour
of
on the
life.
rope, a second on the slope. And in fact, Snow Valley does open outside Kellyville in the winter of 1971, but almost immediately runs into problems, as you might expect.
Did it have to do with Watergate?
The winter is too warm. It had to do with water. The winter is too warm.
Boo, winter of 1971.
He doesn't get the freezing nights he needs. When he tries to make artificial snow, it turns out that northeastern Oklahoma is very windy. You've alluded to this about New England.
That's right.
It's much windier than what he's used to, and as a result, all his math about how the snow will scatter is wrong, and it all lands in a farmer's field. Like the snow blows away from where the slopes and lands on somebody else's land.
The wind doesn't blow in Oklahoma. It's just that Kansas sucks.
Woo! There's finally he finally does get one toe going on one little slope. The problem is nobody can ski. He's attracting all these people who are like, what a fun lark.
Right.
And renting them gear.
And then he's also selling them splints and crutches. And
that's exactly what happens. People crash into the concession stand. Right. People crash into the outhouse, knocking it over. Many people crash into the barbed wire fence at the bottom of the slope, which I'm not a skier, but I don't think that's what you want.
That's not what we typically do, but he released this from a cow farmer.
That's exactly what it is. It's a converted pasture. And we should probably do a barbed wire entry at some point.
They're fascinating.
The history of barbed wire is amazing, but it's also very important to that part of the country. So when people crash into the barbed wire, they can't cut the barbed wire. That's Farmer Brown, that his cows are going to get out. So with the cattle in mind, they're just cutting up people's ski jackets.
Oh, and those are expensive.
Cutting up people's expensive LL Bean gear. Maybe that's not what they have in Oklahoma.
They wouldn't have had LL Bean, but yeah.
To get them out of the barbed wire. So it's a disaster. And within a day or two, a nearby neighbor, apparently it wasn't Watergate, it was Vietnam. A neighbor just home from the war complains about the noise.
Of people screaming caught in the wire?
Yes. Dear God, get me out of here. FUGI. No, I guess we can assume that the skiers are yelling and noisy. And it reminds him of Charlie.
I ain't no fortunate son. No.
Maybe he's got PTSD.
Sure, of course he does. As we know now, everyone from Vietnam had PTSD.
And he complains to local authorities, and there is a noise ordinance. And that's finally the thing that shuts down Snow Valley is one broken vet.
Wow.
But it wasn't going well anyway.
After how long? How long was the run?
2 to 3 days. Oklahoma had skiing for 2 to 3 days in the winter of 1971. And people still talk about it to this day.
Did he dismantle all of the huddle houses and the rope tows?
I mean, from the description of the concession stands and outhouses that can be knocked over by a single skier, I think it was probably pretty flimsy anyway.
Right.
It was like the train cars of the region. Today, if you go there, the brush and the trees have grown back on the hills. You can still see the flat area that was graded for the parking lot, but there's really almost no sign left of the 3 days of unhappy, painful skiing.
Is there any record of how many people actually bought a lift ticket during the 3-day run?
I would love to know how many people were there.
Was it 50? Was it 500?
It was enough to make enough noise
that we still recall
that it bothered this private.
Right.
Right. But yes, but also enough that there are still some locals who remember, the summer they got to work at the popcorn stand for 3 short days.
And that concludes Snow Valley, Oklahoma, entry 1182.JB2419, certificate number 17398 in the omnibus.
It also hopefully concludes the Pokemon deal for a Delphox EX, a Groudon EX, and an Eviltal EX.
Hayden, in the unlikely event that you grow up to be a normal adult, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are archived at Omnibus Project. Hayden, if you want to know more about your friend Dylan's father, you can go to his Twitter account at Ken Jennings. And if you'd like to know more about me, a scary other adult, you can go to at John Roderick. You'll learn a lot, and maybe it will help you grow.
Maybe the wrong things.
Also, you can go to Instagram and see just how scary I am at John Roderick. You can email us. Hayden, do not email us. You know where Ken lives, and I don't want to hear from you. At theomnibusproject@gmail.com. If you're on Facebook, which as a young person, I'm sure you're not.
You're certainly not.
There is no kick page for Omnibus. I don't even think there is kick pages, or are kick pages. But Hayden, I would suggest that you tell your Cops and Robbers Playing parents to go to Omnibus Futurelings Facebook page and hang out with other adults that like to play fun games.
You could take a TikTok break and open a Facebook account, Hayden. It wouldn't kill you.
You should go around to all your friends and collect different things that you would like to give to Ken's kids and send them to us at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155, including... actually, I think you should mail these Pokemans to us.
Don't give them to Dylan.
No, give them to us. We'll hold them over Dylan's head.
They go to the same. They go to different high schools now. So this may actually be the easiest way to do the deal.
Yeah,
Dylan, to mail them to good old PO Box 55744.
Dylan, you're going to have to come to me for these Pokemons because Hayden is going to send them to me.
And John's very tall and is going to kind of try to hold them out of your reach you jump and say, "Come on, guys! Come on! This isn't funny, guys."
He's taller than you, though. Now
he is. He is. I measured him on his birthday, and he is within a quarter of an inch of 6 feet.
Wow, he's a big kid.
Big kid.
All those home.
He still weighs
meals.
like 138, though.
All teenagers who are listening to this show should pool your money and help support the program.
Go to your mom and dad's purse or closet or wallet. Take out the little green rectangles,
or use whatever bitcoins you're mining on your iPads. And support the show at patreon.com/omnibusproject. There's bonus content there. There are other perks for being a donor to the show, in addition to feeling good about yourself or selves. And that includes those of you who have multiple selves, by supporting a thing that you love that is good. And apparently for hire.
Hayden, you are younger than us, but our contemporary in a way in that our lifespans overlapped. We certainly hope that the catastrophe fear may not come during your lifespan, but other listeners, we speak to you from a vantage point in your distant past, and we have no idea how long our civilization will survive. Hopefully, Dylan and Hayden grow up to honorable manhood. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another not-so-self-interested entry in the Omnibus.